and welcome back. I'm breaking away from my usual drum bass content to tackle a quick project for one of the other instruments in my studio. For about 10 years, I've owned this 70s era Fender Rhodes, and I consider it one of my most prized possessions. I use it on all sorts of recordings, rehearsals, and it's a fixture in my space. About 5 years ago, I bought these brackets to stack another keyboard on top of the Rhodes, and that's worked well. But one struggle I've always had was stacking sheet music, my computer, or anything else over the rounded top of the Rhodes case. I was scrolling on Instagram a while ago and found this photo where somebody created a flat desktop for their Rhodes in the same way the case sits on top of it. It looked fairly simple enough for me to replicate on my own, so I figured I'd take a shot at making one. I grabbed some measurements for the desktop, and then I went up to my garage and cut some plywood down to rough size. I followed that up with cutting some side rails which would support the desktop flat to the ground. I tried to look up the angle of these side rails on the Rhodes, but got some mixed reviews, so I just took the top of my case and scribed the boards to match. I went over to my Rhodes then to see the angle in place and make sure I was happy with the height of the side rails before going any further. I then went upstairs and taped both side pieces together to cut at once with a jigsaw. I would have preferred to use a miter saw, but unfortunately the side rails were too long for that, and I don't have an angled sled for my table saw, so by hand is the only way I could do it. Once everything was cut down, I went back and did a dry fit just to see where it laid before attaching it all together. I'm glad I took the time to do this because once I had it all in place, I realized the top was probably a ½ inch to an inch too wide. After I trimmed that down, I drilled some pocket holes in the sides and attached them to the desktop. I also decided at this point to add a back rail for extra support to keep the top from potentially sagging in the middle. I attached it the same way as the sides, but I also added some 1-inch holes in the back for cables to pass through. After that, I could add some stain and wait for this thing to dry. The next morning, I woke up and added some polyurethane to give it a nice smooth finish, and then I moved it downstairs since it wasn't going to dry well in my uninsulated garage in the middle of a Wisconsin winter. After it was finally dry, I did a light sanding and cleaned it off with a wet rag before putting it in place. All in all, this project turned out great, and I think for any Rhodes owner who would appreciate having a flat surface, whether for writing, putting a computer, sheet music, or another keyboard on top, this is a great solution. Luckily, I had all the materials on hand for this project, so it didn't cost me a dime, but I imagine you could do it fairly cheaply if you wanted to replicate this yourself. Shout out to Brian Dane Hansen on Instagram for the inspiration, and I'll link his page down below if you want to check out any of the pictures of his variation on this project. If you enjoyed this video, consider giving it a like and subscribing to my channel to stay up to date on future video releases. Until next time, thanks.